Hi, it's Mike from Pros as Expert, and we're now on the Aspen Media stand, and I'm joined by Anthony Wilkins from Junger. I've got that right, Junger?
Got that right?
Yes,
Junger,
I actually went on the internet. When I was doing the review for the plugin, I actually went on the internet to try and work out how it was pronounced.
Well, it's a German name, a German company, so the J is pronounced as a Y, so yes, it's Junger. Junger Audio.
Great, and so I reviewed this particular plugin, that you've done a partnership with Flux. That was an interesting collaboration. Presumably it was an easier way of getting a plugin.
Well, exactly. I mean, we've had the algorithm, the loudness processing algorithm in our hardware units for quite some time, and they've been very successful and used in play-out situations by many broadcasters around the world. And we were getting lots of requests to say, look, we really like the way your algorithm works, but we'd love to have it as a plugin version. So the quickest route to market was to look for a partner that was familiar with developing plugins for third parties, and Flux were the guys that we chose. And it was actually a very quick process, amazingly quick from first discussions to actually getting a prototype product. And we think they've done a really good job. We like the interface, and we like the way it works. So,
yeah, I mean, I have to say, when I did the review of this, I love the fact that you've got data for the input, so you've got true peak meter, you've got your momentary short term, so you can see what's coming in, you can see what's going out, and you can see what's being changed.
And that's really mirrored from our hardware units, because the display panel that we can use with our hardware units allow you to see all of those parameters. So you want to know what's coming, what the unit is doing, and what's coming out. So yes, we just basically ported the whole thing across.
So what drove the plugin? Because obviously you've got all your hardware units, which you've been making for quite a while. So what drove the plugin?
Well, simply market demand. It's what customers were asking for. As I said, we have a lot of users with the hardware units in their playout chain, and the requests were coming thick and fast. Look, can we have it as a plugin? So, like any good company, we listen to what our customers are asking for, and if it's feasible and possible, we give it to them, and that's an example of this.
And what was the driving force by making this plugin? Because for me, one of the questions that I asked was that this plugin, in essence, I mean, one of the things I like about loudness is that it puts control back in me as the person mixing to be able to determine how the program. I'm not fighting transmission processing, the Optimods, the whatever. What I mix in the studio is what I want, but obviously here you are modifying the dynamic range of programs. So why this concept in the first place?
Why the concept of a loudness algorithm in the first place? Well, to deal with the fact that there are situations where you don't have necessarily control of audio that you've got to get out on air fairly quickly. I mean, if you've got the luxury of creating the content right from scratch, then the methodology, I think, is really quite well established now with audio mixers, that with a trained ear, they don't need to have any correction. So if they're creating a mix, then trust your ears and maybe have a loudness meter running in the corner, just as a little speedo check. Yeah. But if you're not in that position, if you have to deal with content that's come from somewhere else, you've got to get it turned around and broadcast on air or sent to some content provider quite quickly, then there can be a need for a little bit of automated check and correction where necessary. It doesn't have to be a heavy-handed hammer squashing it. So our algorithm is designed in such a way that it's very, let's say, transparent, in that it's a gentle acting algorithm, but there's a need sometimes for a quick turnaround. And in a digital audio workspace environment, a plugin that can do that for you and add a little bit of gentle correction where needed, or not if not needed, is an extremely useful tool for that quick turnaround situation.
And presumably also, because we're getting more and more multi-skilling in our industry, having a tool that perhaps can iron out a video editor's attempts at a mix, shall I put it unsubtly, is presumably also a very useful facet for this.
It is indeed, because more and more I think we're coming across the situation where the audio engineer is becoming a lesser spotted species, and in many situations productions have to be made without the luxury of a purely skilled and highly trained audio engineer, unfortunately. And a tool like this is a great asset for those that are not necessarily completely experienced in audio. They have to deal with audio, but it's not their specialism. So this is a great aid for those people that have to get a production done, and they have to be aware of the audio. And thankfully, I think there's an increased awareness of the importance that audio plays in content. I think all too often in the past, audio was sort of the poor relation to the video, and it was a case of, well, as long as there's some audio there, we're okay. If there's a meter bouncing, that's okay, there's audio. We've done it. But thankfully there's a little bit more recognition now of the part that audio plays in the experience, and a tool like this really helps those that are primarily focused on other aspects, but realize the importance of it, and it helps them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, one of the things when I teach and talk about loudness is the fact that now we actually have some valuable information, because when we were using PPMs, peak reading meters, quasi-peak reading meters, that the video editor would just make everything peak PPM 6. Well, of course, some stuff will be, compressed music will be very loud, speech will be much quieter. Now, they're actually getting a meter that gives us an indication of, an indication of loudness.
Well, exactly. It's been really a seismic change in the way audio is mixed, and you're absolutely right. Anybody that has been a TV viewer over the last few years has suffered from the loud commercial syndrome, where the makers of adverts overuse the compression to make themselves sound louder than the others, in an attempt to capture viewers' attention, which of course in many cases worked in reverse. It kept people jumping for the remote to turn it down. So the development of the BS 1770 algorithm to give us a repeatable way of measuring this very elusive thing called loudness, because as I'm sure we know, it's such a subjective thing to have a meter to measure this subjective feeling that people can agree on. Was a big milestone, and since then the adoption of mixing to a loudness standard rather than to a peak standard has done exactly as you say. It allows viewers to have the perception of an equally loud content, irrespective of looking at a peak meter. So it's a great stride. Yeah, it's a great step.
So we've got the plugin here, but presumably if you're still using the hardware for broadcast live type situations, can you control the hardware from a computer, or is it button pressing on the front panels?
No. On the hardware units, there is essentially just an on-off power switch on the back. All the control for the hardware units is done through a browser interface. So simply point the browser at the IP address of the unit, and all the setups, all the configuring, all the routing, all the parameters are set through there. But as far as the loudness processing part of our hardware, the algorithm that we use, Level Magic is the name of it, it's a very adaptive algorithm. So there's actually very few parameters that we need to set. So if you're installing one of the hardware units, the setup is very, very quick and easy. Do your routing, set up some basic parameters of what loudness standard am I working to, and the preset values are filled in. We have a number of standard presets which are, I suppose, more or less aggressive in the way that they aim to control the loudness. So if you've got content that you know should be compliant or very close to compliant, then you can use a very gentle preset, perhaps just true peak limiting. But if you're potentially receiving content that could be way off, then you can use a more aggressive preset.
On the plugin, I was very interested in the news preset, and I thought, live news where you've not had chance to pre-fade, listen to anything, you just open the fader and whatever comes, it's going to manage that.
Exactly. Now, that's not a setting you would want to use long-term on content that's already compliant, because there you're in danger of losing too much dynamic range. And of course, the whole point of a loudness algorithm like this is to equalize loudness but preserve the dynamics of the program. The last thing we want to do is take away the dynamic range that mixing to a loudness target has brought back. Because in the old days of just keeping to a peak level, the tendency was you've lost all your dynamics. But mixing to a loudness target brings that creativity and that dynamic range back. So we don't want to kill that. We want to tread that fine line between maintaining a loudness target but preserving the dynamics. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
I've been Mike Thornton from Pro Tools Expert at BVE in London.